And here we go. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion on this Tuesday morning. And wow, we started off this week really interesting to see what was really sort of impacting the markets as we came in off of the weekend. And I brought this up and I'm going to bring it up again. That KSU, this buyout chatter continues to be there. And the big acquisition, you've got the Marathon deal selling Speedway $21 billion. So that was just sort of the entryway into the start of this week. Well, then all of a sudden you take a look over at the big four, and specifically you start looking over at Microsoft and Apple. Now, Apple absolutely has been on a tear to the upside. It exploded again yesterday to the upside, pulled back for a little while. This is a stock that just continues to push higher and higher. People are talking about $2 trillion for Apple at some point in the not too distant future as a very easy possibility. Might even get there today the way things are moving. But I can tell you this. So yesterday, that really was powering the markets. You had this nice big move. You had the Dow up about 200 points yesterday. NASDAQ up about 150 points yesterday. You had Microsoft, you had Apple, you had Boeing, you had Intel, all sort of pulling up on the Dow itself. And then over at the NASDAQ, you had names like Zoom. We haven't talked as much about that lately, but you had Zoom, you had Tesla, you had NVIDIA, you had Qualcomm, you had Microsoft. So again, it's not just the big four names that are out there. There is a lot of more participation when we take a look over. Semiconductors definitely participating along with some of those big tech names, absolutely. But it's more than just the big tech names. The big tech names, of course, we talk about it all the time, about 20% of the S&P 500, all that story. But we're talking about just what's really moving the NASDAQ, which has really been in a powerful way. You look at the Dow, like I say, up about 200 points. You're talking about a 26,000 point figure. And then all of a sudden you take a look over at the NASDAQ and you're talking about somewhere in the 10,000, 10,500 area, 150 point. That's a much bigger move. We're always talking about percentages because that's the more interesting way to sort of dissect how much is really going on, how much is really moving. And certainly the NASDAQ, absolutely a far bigger mover of late, and we hear about that all the time. We've also brought up that the NASDAQ is not just big tech. It's also semiconductors. It's also biotech. It's also a lot of other different names that oftentimes don't get as much credit as they should as we've watched the NASDAQ moving to the upside. So, talked about these chips. The SMH yesterday up another 2%. You got the XLK, the tech index, that was up about 2% yesterday. Healthcare having a great day on the back of Merck and that upgrade and new price, all the rest of it. Merck had a wonderful day to the upside along with J&J, along with Lilly. So what were some of the drags? So sometimes we focus too much on what's really powering the markets, but what is some of the drags on the markets? You take a look at Under Armour yesterday. Not good, tough day. Cruise ships having a hard time. You had Caterpillar, names like Coke that had pulled back a little bit. So not everything so rosy, but a pretty bright day yesterday in terms of some of the participation to the upside. Now, coming into today, though, this morning, we had some small negative markets coming in. We had it was moving around. It was relatively volatile actually in the early morning. We were down significantly more than we were as we got closer and closer to the opening bell, where we were just modestly down, kind of basically right around that flat area, green, red, moving back and forth. And I'll tell you what, you look at oil trading 40 and a half, and I brought that up. Sort of sounds like it's been there for a while. It has. Take a look at gold. Made this nice, huge, powerful move towards 2,000. It's holding on to those gains so far. Silver as well. Nice big move to the upside so far this morning. Traded about 24 and a half. So a nice big move from those names, and in some cases, just kind of holding up. We talk about these commodities oftentimes. Bill Fleckenstein yesterday, if you didn't get a chance, he was outstanding on our roundtable discussion yesterday at Market Rebellion. He really was great. He's really focused, obviously, on the metals. He talked a lot about the gold. We talked a lot about silver, talked about copper. He talked about all of the various metals. But it was very interesting when he was talking about silver and his approach and where the direction is that he thinks. Now, he's been bullish for a long time. We do know that. But he's been right more often than wrong. And this is a guy who he's been bullish on gold. If you're looking for somebody who could break that down for you, you might want to go back and take a look at what we did yesterday on the round table, because he really dissected gold and the best ways, in his opinion, to trade gold or invest in the gold. He talked about he even has some of it the physical side of it as well, but talked about silver. That was a great conversation. You're going to want to listen to what he said about silver, what the direction is that he feels, not necessarily today or tomorrow, but the direction in general is going for silver, and some of the better ways to play that as well. It's not necessarily just SLV or silver itself. He's got one mining name, so I'll leave that out as a teaser for you. So we got the VIX today. It's actually trading below 24 right now. We're in a really tight sort of a range. We've talked about that, but really tight. We aren't seeing the massive moves that we had been seeing. And as we've contracted, and we've talked about the contraction of the VIX itself, it's a very contracted, even more so today, early on. We're only 45 minutes into the day. A lot of different things can happen, obviously. But early on, we are just not seeing it. Just sort of feels like a summer day. First time in a really, really long time where we're feeling that. However, when I look over at the unusual options that we're seeing, it's already starting to stack up. We've got about 8 or 10 names already, and we are only 45 minutes into the trading session. So I also, before I get to that, I want to point out there are certain names that sometimes we just have to dissect, and we get through these earnings cycles, and all of a sudden we sort of forget about things a little bit. But I got to point out one today. I'm looking at Mosaic, which is leading the S&P 500 right now. It's up about 13%. Great cash flows. They beat and beat. Obviously, if you do year over year, not as good. But expectations are always what people are looking at. And as the expectations were very low, they went over the top of that bar and then some. So that's a nice big move and shaping the S&P a little bit today, as that's one of the biggest leaders right now in the S&P 500 on that big move. So talked a lot about chips. Talked a lot about the fact that it's not just Facebook and Apple and some of the Amazons and Googles and all that. Many, many other names out there. So we talk about Skyworks. We talk about NVIDIA. We talk about all these various names. The weak side of the NASDAQ today, we're looking right now, and it's Microsoft and Lulu and Skyworks. They're kind of pulling a little bit on the NASDAQ right now. But the strong sides, Take Two, that's an earnings related. AMD, Tesla, Micron, Baidu, you get the idea. So a little bit of a mix. Within that mix, I got to tell you, I look over at the SMH and I see the SMH now at new highs over 170. So the semiconductors just continue, and depending on what's leading, and a lot of what's been leading, AMD and NVIDIA, those specific names certainly do stand out for me. So unusual option activity today. What am I going to give you? I'm going to give you a little AMD. This is a name that started really hitting in a big way for us on the unusual option activity long ago. Stock was in the very low 50s, I think around 52 or so. Started seeing bigger and bigger paper and more acceleration of seeing more paper, it seemed like, as we started moving. Stock made great moves. We've already dissected a lot of that. It made moves off of Intel's earnings to the upside, made moves off its own earnings actually to the upside as well. And here we are today trading a little over $81 a share, and an AMD got a buyer of some August 87.5 calls. Now those were going for about $1.75. Not huge. This isn't a 10,000 type or 20,000 type, but 2,000 of these were bought. Still decent size, like seeing that. And this is a name that's been running and running and running, and still we're seeing some active buyers on a day-to-day. As I mentioned, the SMH at new highs. You've got AMD, nice, big, powerful move. Call it a 30-point move in a not too long of a period of time. And yet there's somebody out there that's looking for the potential for even more movement to the upside. We'll see if that's right or wrong, but I can tell you it's a fairly short term. Here we are into August. It's August 4th today on this Tuesday. We're into August, and these are August expiring. Now, they're not weeklies, but these are regular expiring August options in AMD. So just be careful, because it is a very, very limited time frame that for this stock to make that kind of a move. But nonetheless, that's what we've been seeing. That's been the theme. That's been 2020, and actually even going back into most of 2019. A lot of very, very short-term option participants, and it's very, very much been week-long, 2-week, 3-week, those kinds of things. Very, very short-term. This fits into that category. This is about a 3-week expiring option. So the stock's going to have to make a move to the upside. It's already made an unbelievable moves to the upside. Knowledge is king. You're going to want to get educated. Get educated from our great guys over at Market Rebellion, some of the best in the business, if not the best in the business. I got my guy here. I'm floating out the bull today. Absolutely love it. These golf shirts are awesome. They're over at the Minnesotan. A portion of the proceeds actually go to the Twin Cities Lyme Foundation that my wife is the founder of. So that would be something great. You're helping out a lot of people as they're trying to get to Lyme literate doctors. all kinds of great things. These guys are outstanding. I got to tell you something really excited about today. We got the sun is coming out. This stock market is turning around a little bit. I said we were a little bit into the red early. Right now, the Dow's up now, very small, up about 15 points. NASDAQ up about 22 points. And as I say, the VIX underneath 24, trading around 23 3/4. Folks, have a great day of trading.